Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Z-Man here, and we've got a lot to get to today, so let's get down to it. We got a lot going on in the world. North Korea is trying to tell us what to do. Sony is releasing a whole bunch of information on CNN and other news outlets about why they made the decision they did, so we're going to go into that a little bit. We're going to talk about a lot of different stuff here today, but we're also going to go through my buggo bag a little further like I did in the previous episodes of Z-Man in the Morning the other day, and we're going to get down to why I carry the stuff I carry, and we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of different stuff today. So for now, enjoy the music. And we're back. So, I found a little bit of information online this morning that I thought y'all would like to hear. In 2004, North Korea demanded that the Czech Republic ban the movie Team America World Police. Now, most of us are familiar with Team America World Police. If you haven't seen the show, or I should say the movie, then if you've ever heard that cliche song that everybody likes to make fun of us Patriots for with, or I should say make fun of us with, this particular song, it's that America, fuck yeah. If you've ever heard that, that's from this movie. So yeah, it's a bit of a parody that caricaturizes America's role in the Middle East and all these other countries. But moving on here was, they asked the Czech Republic, North Korea that is, asked them to ban that movie from all theaters back in 2004, and the Czech Republic Foreign Minister replied, "Obviously, that's absurd to demand in a democratic country." So if you ask me, that man has balls of brass, and I do not understand why America hasn't done the same. We should have just flipped a big old middle finger up to them and said, you know what, we're just going to increase security outside of movie theaters if it's that important. I mean, come on now. This is ridiculous. Why the hell are we bending to the will of North Korea? You know what I mean? I understand that Japan, being Japanese, I'm well aware of the fact that Japan is within range of North Korea. But at the same time, every time North Korea tests a missile or claims they've got some super weapon that they're going to take the United States out with, it blows up on the launch pad, or it doesn't work, or for whatever reason. I don't think they've ever launched a missile that actually worked, or at least went beyond a couple miles away from the launch pad. I don't even think they've ever had a successful launch. Or if they did, it was so small and nobody really even paid attention. I mean, yeah, they were launching some stuff and testing out some stuff a couple of years ago, and America was telling them they need to cut the crap, and they were making threats, but they do the same thing every time. They talk all this crap about being these, we're going to blow this up and we're going to do this and terrorist attacks that and so on and so forth. And then they end up shutting their mouth as soon as America gives them some humanitarian aid. So it just seems to me like they're just trying to get America's eyes on them again so that they can get some help, because they're a struggling country and nobody else wants to help them because they're a bunch of idiots. On top of which their government just pretty much siphons all of the resources off to them and the royal family while the rest of the citizens sit there and starve. I mean, it's pretty much basic, textbook dictatorship. Starve your people, deprive them of all, privileges, or I wouldn't even say privileges, and, basic human rights, and make it so that it's harder for them to revolt, make it so that they don't see what it's like on the outside world. Because I guarantee you, if not for all this crazy brainwashing, I guarantee you most of the people in North Korea don't want to be in North Korea. Anybody who does has just been indoctrinated since birth and pretty much brainwashed. I mean, there's plenty of people who have defected from North Korea, and now they're coming forth and talking on the news about how North Korea or whoever cyber attacks us could potentially have more devastating effects than a nuclear war, which is more than possible. If you watch the documentary, the hell was it called? The Great American Blackout. I believe it was a History Channel documentary or Discovery. I could be wrong. Anyway, point is if you watch this documentary, it'll show exactly what could happen, because the exact reason why the power goes out nationwide in America is because of the simple fact that it was attacked on the grid. Now, we had an awesome show last night on Blog Talk. Me, Bobby, and Becky had on Tom Loopshoe from the Bunker Report page, and I honestly have to thank Tom again here online, or I should say on the air, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be doing this podcast, because he was talking about going on Rage Against the Regime, and then I started listening to it, got into contact with Bobby, and me and Bobby started talking, and that's how I became affiliated with Rage Against the Regime. So thank you, Tom. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to actually converse with you the way I did last night if it wasn't for the fact that I ended up watching YouTube videos. So if any of you guys out there are aspiring YouTubers, don't give up on it. I was ignored for a good 2 years by a lot of the higher up guys, not Tom or any of these guys, but it took me a little while to establish myself in the community amongst all these preppers, and I'm still just now getting started after 2 years of work. So don't be discouraged. It's not going to happen overnight. It's very rare that you become an overnight YouTube sensation. So don't get yourself all twisted and think, oh, well, I'm not going to be able to do this, because for a little while I had those thoughts, but the more I put my thoughts out there, the more information I shared, and the more I conducted myself as a professional, the more people started taking notice. So don't knock yourself if you're having a hard time, if people aren't watching your videos, you're getting a lot of dislikes. One thing I've learned is when you get controversy, when you get people hating on you, number one, that gives you more power. Number two, there's always going to be somebody who's going to have something negative to say about your work. So I don't care what anybody thinks about my podcasting. I don't care what anybody thinks about anything. So far, it seems like everybody enjoys the content I put out, and to all of my subscribers, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, any of the listeners here on Spreaker, thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening, because the only reason why I do this is for you guys. If I was just sitting here talking to myself into my tablet, I don't think I would be doing it. So you guys are really what make this show what it is, and it sounds like a cliche thing to say, but it really is true. I work in the live entertainment industry, and I'm also a musician, and I understand that you can't treat people who enjoy your content, no matter what it is, whether it's music or videos. You gotta recognize that the only reason why you are where you are is because of the people who enjoy what you do. So I'm gonna tell you right now, I appreciate every single like, listen, comment, any bit of participation. It makes me happy to see that. I had a guy named Ruckus messaging me last time I did the podcast, asking me questions. That made my day, I'll be honest with you. I love hearing from the fans, anybody who loves listening to the page, to whether you enjoy, my prepping advice, or whether you enjoy just listening to us all bullshit about, politics or current events. I try to put out a good show. So, that being said, we're going to move on here. I'm going to pull up my bug out bag here, and we're going to go through some more of the items I have here, and I'm going to explain why I carry them. So, one of the first items that I forgot to get to last time I was doing the show was I carry a small, very lightweight nylon hammock in my bag, and it compacts down into a little cup that I can use as a drinking cup too, but I can use this to get myself up off the ground. For those of you who maybe haven't done much camping, those of you who don't know much about wilderness survival, you don't want to be on the ground. The ground is obviously going to be a lot colder than your body temperature, and it's just going to suck the body heat right out of you. So you're always going to want to have something to insulate you between yourself and the earth. Even if you have to cut down a bunch of pine boughs or spruce boughs, branches if you will, and lay them down, then at least you're getting a good insulating barrier between you and, I'm assuming, snowy ground, because during the summertime you don't have to be so concerned about it. It can still happen, because we all know that it still gets chilly even in the warmest parts of the United States. Even in Death Valley, it gets, below zero sometimes in the nighttime. So don't discount wherever you are not getting cold. Don't think, oh, well, I live in the desert, so I don't have to worry about that. You can die of hypothermia anywhere. You can die of hypothermia in 98.6 degree water, which is your body temperature. So don't think that you're invincible, because no matter what, I don't care how tough you are, Mother Nature is tougher. So take that into account. That's why the first layer of shelter that you have on you is clothing. So I recommend investing in a good jacket, good gear, good boots that are watertight, and I also recommend boots that go up past your ankle. I wouldn't say too high because you don't want them to be heavy, but at least mid-shin. And there's a good reason for that. Number one, it can help protect you against a snake bite if you live in an area where there are poisonous snakes, but it also protects your shins. It protects your ankles from getting for instance, I am a large guy, and I've rolled my ankles a couple times out in the woods or just out and about. But because I'm so heavy, when I roll my ankles, I really roll my ankles, or I sprain it, whatever I do. I tend to have, I've been working on my ankle strength by doing leg exercises, but I tend to have weak ankles. I guess it just runs in my family, because my uncle was an athlete and he messed up his ankle. Actually, my uncle was almost a Yankee, and he was invited to spring training and broke his ankle sliding into first or second base during practice, and they had to cut him. Otherwise, he would have been a Yankee. So, but that was ages ago, not any modern time. My uncle is way past his prime. But back to what I was saying is that kind of or when it comes to your gear, what you get what you pay for. So whether it comes to your boots, your jacket, your whatever gear you're wearing, your thermal gear, a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's a ripoff. This is a ripoff. You shouldn't spend this much money on this, or you shouldn't spend any more money on that. If you're planning on going out into the woods and trusting your life to the gear, then you should do your research, figure out what people say about the gear, and make the decision for yourself, first of all. Second of all, don't skimp on your gear, because I'm telling you now, a lot of these companies are full of crap and overcharged just because it's, I guess you could say, survival gear is a specialty item, but they also categorize it as camping gear. So it depends on where you go. Sometimes it's just camping outdoors gear, or they have straight up survival gear. But a lot of times, things that are geared for quote unquote survival typically fall apart. For instance, when I was going through the bug out bag in the previous episode, there are certain things with the company SOG that are hit or miss. They sell really great knives, and they tend to come right out of the box, nice and razor sharp. Their machetes and their tomahawks are somewhat decent, but the fire starter that I got, for instance, I'll tell you now, avoid the tools and all the stuff that you see at Walmart during Christmas time. Anything you see in Walmart during Christmas time is a piece of garbage. It was cheaply made. That's why they are so cheap, because they skimped on the products on them. I mean, certain things, like for instance, the SOG kukri machete, or the SOG machetes in general, are pretty good. I have 2 machetes made by SOG, and they use decent steel, somewhat hard. You can get a nice edge on it without a lot of effort, and it holds an edge okay. It's not, it's not going to hold an edge like super high carbon steel, and it's not going to, sharpen up like it, but it gets damn close for certain models. I have the SOG Fari machete, or SOG Fari, however you want to call it, and they made a decent machete. They made the blade nice and thick. The saw teeth are actually, really aggressive and work really well. They don't dull. I've sawed down some pretty decent sized logs off of just rotten trees and stuff that some other machetes that I've had, for instance, like the Gerber Gator Mini Pro. I have that one, and the blade's a bit flimsy on those. They're okay, but over time, if you weren't using proper technique with a machete, or with that particular machete, I think you would end up bending the blade if you swung it hard, or if you got it jammed somehow, it would be really hard to pry it out. Whereas the SOG machetes, they make their blades like almost a quarter-inch thick, so they tend to be nice and weighted. And I haven't even really used my SOG Fari machete too much, but Tom Loopshoe did a review on it that I was really impressed with, because it was pretty much exactly what the results I've gotten with mine. But yeah, what I mean by avoiding the Walmart specials is, for instance, I bought the SOG Tomahawk, and it's okay. The design is not the worst design in the world, but they don't hold up after a long period of use. I'm really skilled in knife throwing and tomahawk throwing, things of that nature. I've been a martial artist my whole life, and just, I don't know, throwing weapons just kind of always, I was always attracted to them. It's funny that throwing weapons are supposedly illegal here in New York, but they still sell them in stores. So I'm assuming it's more or less illegal down in the city than they are up here in upstate New York. But I'm skilled with ninja stars, or shuriken, if you will, and a lot of tools and stuff like that. Anyway, but back to what I was saying about the Tomahawk is, I threw it for, I don't know, I'd say a good 2 months straight, and made sure that the bolts and everything were tight, and nothing got loosened, and so on and so forth. But what ended up happening is I made the head wobble loose, and there's a small metal collar around the base of where the Tomahawk meets the head of the Tomahawk and the handle that started bending. So my cure for it was, I took it apart and I put this special soft rubber tape around it. I figured it would be a shock absorber, and put it back in. Well, eventually that wore out, so I took it back apart and I filled it with a special pliable 2-part resin, or actually, 2-part epoxy that dries almost like a hard rubber. So I put that in there, and so far I haven't had any problems. My only thing is I would sink the head of the Tomahawk into a piece of wood real well, and when I would go to pull it out, the handle would move before the head would. So over time, when you're throwing something like that, that little jiggle will wear out the handles. So what I did to remove that little bit of wobble was fill that little pocket in the bottom with resin, because their mistake in the design was they left a hollow space at the very bottom, and that was allowing the head to flex a little bit. So I recommend avoiding the SOG Tomahawks unless you just plan on playing around with them, or you want a cheap beater, because I used it just to get good at throwing, which I will admit, they throw nicely. They have a nice balance. And the head steel, they sharpen up pretty well. I actually dropped it casually onto my lap after I sharpened it. I mean, I used to be a butcher, so I'm extremely skilled at sharpening knives and stuff in the first place. But I dropped it casually, and I was able to put such a sharp edge on this blade, or I should say on this axe, that I actually ended up ruining a pair of my favorite camouflage BDUs, or camo pants, for those of you who aren't versed in that lingo. I ended up putting a hole in them just by casually dropping it onto my lap, and I caught it because it was going right towards my leg near my femoral artery. So I was like, holy crap, because I literally dropped it as if it was literally maybe 4 inches from my leg when I dropped it, and it actually sliced through thick denim pants. I was like, wow. So I will give them an applause on the steel they use, the design, and the balance for throwing. It is something to brag about, but they need to make the design more durable. If they made it more durable and more capable, because the whole thing is they say that it's capable of being thrown, and it's balanced for throwing on the box. So yes, it may be balanced for throwing, SOG. If you ever hear this, I'm going to give you some advice right now. It may be balanced for throwing, and it may be a nice design, but make your designs more durable. That's one thing I've got to complain about with them. So, moving on to another item in my bag here. Let's see here. Oh, I touched on this slightly the other day when I did the show. My Gerber knife. It's a drop point knife, and for those of you who don't know, a drop point knife is a knife where the spine of the blade, or the backside of the blade that's not sharpened, curves down a little bit. And what that's for is so when you're gutting an animal like a deer or some kind of game, it allows you to glide the blade between the bottom layer of muscle tissue and the skin that you're splitting while you're gutting so that you don't puncture the gut sac. Those of you who've never hunted before, when you kill a deer, you have to slice the stomach open and take the intestines and all the guts out. But if you do it properly, it comes out in this big sack. And if you're out in the middle of the woods, you can just leave it there and coyotes will take care of it. For instance, where I'm at, you leave a deer, if you can dress a deer right in the middle of the field and leave it there overnight and come back the next day and all the guts and bones are gone. Circle of life, it gets recycled. You feed the coyotes. And some people would disagree with that, but the whole point is you get a varmint license and you got to keep the numbers of coyotes down. You bring them in by leaving out some carcasses, and then in the summer and the winter time, whichever you prefer, depending on, I think there are some states that have coyote seasons, but a lot of time it's just open season on them year round because they're such a nuisance. You lure them in with some meat, and then you go out there and you hunt them. And there's a lot of places that, especially around here, that'll pay you $10, $20 a coyote pelt. So if you have the time and the skill, you can call in a whole pack of coyotes and make yourself a couple $100 in a couple hours just by having some fun and hunting. So, that's the whole thing. Country boy will survive. You gotta learn these things, folks. You gotta learn how to skin a deer. You gotta learn how to do all this stuff. And that's pretty much, going into that tangent. That's why I carry a spare knife just for gutting deer and processing meat, so that your other knives, you don't have to worry about breaking them or whatever. Because there have been times where I've broken the tips off knives by accident because I've caught it on a bone. It's usually when I'm processing, the meat that's closer to the bone that, like you don't want to be wasteful, so you try to clean the deer up as much as possible. At least I do. I've seen people straight up just take, what's it called? I've seen people just straight up take the back strap, which is a muscle that runs, two muscles that run a long ways down the spine on either side. They're these long tubular muscles. I've seen people shoot a deer, slice the back open, and just pop the back straps out and walk away. And I'm like, you are a piece of crap. That was the most wasteful thing I've ever seen in my life. And that's another thing. There's a lot of people who just hunt for pure sport. They don't even eat meat, and they hunt. And those people should be smacked upside the head. I mean, yes, it's a free country. You can do whatever the hell you want. But in my opinion, if you're shooting animals that, especially, I've heard of like even people who won't eat meat at all, and they hunt, and I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. So, it used to be that the only people who ate vegetables were the people who couldn't hunt. I should say only ate vegetables, because everybody ate, vegetables. Were omnivores. But I digress. Carrying a good knife with a company name that has a good reputation is a good idea, pretty much. And I use the word good a lot there. But point is Gerber, they make a good knife for cheap. You can spend $20 on a Gerber knife and know that the steel is going to be somewhat worthwhile. I mean, they're not the highest quality knives on the planet. But if you're looking for a knife that you're not worried about beating up, but it's going to still be there when you do beat it up, Gerber is the way to go. I have so many Gerber knives that I've had for years that they sharpen up nice and sharp. You use them and, they keep on ticking. The only problem I've had with this particular Gerber knife, and I think it's just a flaw in the design, or I should say in this particular batch that I bought years ago, is that the blade chips, but that just means that the steel is real hard. So sometimes, like for instance, I've had the blade chip because I've accidentally smacked it with a meat mallet when I was working with it at a butchery. I used to use that to help me carve up roasts and stuff like that. And I accidentally smacked it with a meat tenderizing mallet one day, and I put a chip in the blade. Things like that. But besides that, I've never had an issue. And it sharpened right out, so. Let's see here. I'm trying not to make so much noise by rustling around my bag too much, but I'm trying to figure out what else I got in here for you guys to learn about. So many pockets on this thing. It's a military bag. That's the only problem, is if I needed to get some of this stuff in an emergency, I'd be screwed. All right. Well, one item I have here that I picked it up at Wally World is what's called the Might D light. It's like a D-shaped LED light. It's got these two really bright LEDs on it, but the cool thing about it is it's got a set of magnets on the backside. It's got like a hinge in the center, and both sides. If you were to cut it, it would look like if you were to cut it dead down the center, it would look like two Ds. That's why it's called the Might D light, obviously. But you click the light on, and there's two different settings. There's obviously two different lights. You click it on once, both lights come on. You click it on twice, and one light stays on, and then you click it a third time, and it's off completely. But the other cool thing about it is it's got 4 holes at each corner for mounting purposes, or tying it to something if you wanted to use cord. And then one other cool feature is that it's got these hooks attached to rubber straps that attach on either side. So you can use this for so many different things. I've used this as a light while I'm filming out in the woods in the dark. You could use this if, for instance, maybe you're out on your 4-wheeler while you're hunting, and you can bungee strap this thing to the front of your quad if your headlights go out. I mean, it's that bright. You could use it as headlights for a 4-wheeler or even a small car. I mean, this is brighter than some of the older cars' headlights that I've used, at least for short distances. So, I mean, if you're in a real bind, at least, you would have something. But this thing has so many different mounting and positioning options that it was just completely worth it. And it's light as hell. It's maybe 5 ounces, and it takes 3 AA batteries. So if you want, you can get rechargeable batteries and a solar power battery charger, and you're set to go. You'd have a really worthwhile light, especially because LEDs do not use a lot of power. I've had the same 3 AA batteries in this thing, I'd say, for a good 1.5 years now, and you should always check, when it comes to LED flashlights, because they make batteries last so long, you should always check the batteries like once a week, because I've had a couple flashlights where the batteries just straight up got to the point where they exploded inside the flashlight because it just was able to drain them so far. Alright, so moving on is I have, like I said in the previous episode, you always want to have redundancy in your bag, and what I mean by that is you want to have doubles or triples of everything, if not quadruples if you can afford the weight. And the reason is because it may not just be you alone in the survival situation, and the last thing you want to do is be fighting over the resources that you have. Plus, if you're alone, for instance, I'm holding in my hands right now an extra emergency poncho, which is bright orange. I have another set of hand warmers that are sealed up in a nice thick plastic container, and I have another what's called a survival rescue blanket, but it's a space blanket. Those aluminum foil looking Mylar blankets that you use. So I have 2 Mylar blankets in my bag so that I can make a shelter with one of them and use the other one as insulation. And what I would recommend versus wrapping it around yourself like a blanket is, if your clothes are still dry or you're still dry, at least, on the inner core of your clothes, I would recommend packing the space blanket, unfolding it and then crinkling it up around your body inside of your jacket. And the reason is because what insulates you from the cold is dead air pockets, not layers. It's the actual amount of air that is trapped inside of your clothes, because it creates a barrier between you and the cold, because your body heat stays in the air easier than it does where it transfers through those solid objects, nice and easy. So, I would recommend, if you can afford it, or if you can spare the Mylar for whatever reason, to stuff some of it inside of your jacket, and kind of, it may not be super comfortable, and it may make a lot of crinkling noises when you move. But I'm telling you now, I have done it before. It will keep you warmer than just wrapping it around yourself, because it's made to trap your body heat and reflect it back to you. So the closer it is to your bare skin, or at least the closer it is to your body heat, the better. So if you're wrapping it around your outer layer of clothes, it's not going to do much. So On top of which, if you're if your clothes aren't waterproof or water resistant of some sort, and you wrap yourself in a Mylar blanket on the inside, and it starts to rain, then it'll at least help keep you drier than it would be if it was on the outside, most likely. I mean, it all depends. Hopefully you have a good enough shelter built, which is another thing. You should practice building a shelter. I'll be honest, I'm not the most skilled in building every single type of shelter, but I can build a shelter. And the other thing you got to factor in is building a shelter takes time. So you got to be able to judge how much daylight you have and whether it'd be worth finding firewood first and then building a shelter, or getting your shelter built and then using the rest of the wood as firewood. On top of which, you also got to factor in how much wood you're going to need for the night, or whatever the case is. I mean, it depends on what you're preparing for. If you're getting ready to go out on the trails for a hunting trip for the day, then you're going to want to prepare for being rescued. So you're also going to want to have to worry about, or not worry about, but you're also going to have to factor in what your survival techniques are going to be. Because a lot of survival techniques that they teach you in survival manuals, like for instance, one of my personal heroes, Les Stroud, he teaches how to get noticed. He teaches you how to get rescued in a regular survival situation, which is great in modern times with modern technology and society around. But if society collapses, you're not going to want to get noticed. So there is a big difference between, I guess you could say, combat or guerrilla camping, if you want to call it that, than it would be survival camping. Because survival camping, you want to build, you want to have a pile of dry tinder and stuff sitting, a big pile as big as you can get it, with some wet wood or whatever around, ready to go, and you get that big pile burning as a signal fire, and then throw some wet wood on it so that it smokes, and get people's attention. You don't want, you have to think about that kind of stuff. If you don't want to be noticed, then you have to find really dry wood, and you have to make a fire a certain way. You have to make sure that your fire doesn't cast light out into the woods in a certain direction. You got to factor in that, people can see smoke for miles. So anybody who's skilled in tracking any kind of military is going to be able to find you in a heartbeat. And if you think about it, the longer you last in a grid down situation or in an end of society situation, the stronger your competition is going to get, and the more likely it's going to be that you're going to run into somebody who's militarily trained versus, regular civilians. I mean, I am pretty good with a gun. I should say a rifle, because I don't own any pistols. I'll be honest, I suck with pistols because I've never owned one. And now that I'm above the age of 21, I'm not allowed to fire pistols anymore because I have to get my license, which I do not have yet. So I had a little bit of experience when I was under the age of 21, because I had a lot of police and military friends who would teach me how to shoot with them. But now that I'm over 21, I'm not allowed to handle them anymore. So, that's really how it works out with that. I'm going to take a quick musical break, and I'm going to, dig out some more cool stuff in my bug out bag, and we'll be right back.
There's bound to be a ghost at the back of your closet. No matter where you live, there'll always be a few things, maybe several things, that you're gonna find really difficult to forgive. There's gonna come a day when you feel better. You'll rise up free and easy on that day, and float from branch to branch, lighter than the air. Just when that day is coming, who can say, who can say? Our mother has been absent ever since we founded Rome. There's gonna be a party when the wolf comes home. neighbors what's been going on. And they will shake their heads and wag their bony fingers in all the wrong directions, and by daybreak we'll be gone. I'm gonna get myself in fighting trim, scope out every angle of unfair advantage. I'm gonna bribe the officials, I'm gonna kill all the judges. It's gonna take you people years to recover from all of the damage. Our mother has been absent ever since we founded Rome, but there's gonna be a party when the wolf comes home.
And we're back. So, again, I was going through my bug out bag here, and I pulled out a bag that I keep in here with some small birthday candles, because you never know when a wax candle will come in handy, especially out in the woods, because obviously they sustain a flame pretty long, and you can use wax for a whole bunch of different things out in the woods. You can use it to waterproof your boots. You can use it, maybe you get a small hole in your boot, something like that, and you can use that to drip it in there and help seal some of the water out. Another thing here I keep in the bag is dried up pieces of bark from various types of trees that I know, start very good fires when they're dry. Some of the bark shreds into fine little shreds. Some of the bark is hardwood. Some of the bark is softwood. It depends on what I'm trying to accomplish, what the weather's like. But it also helps, harder wood burns hotter and shorter, and softer wood burns slower, so it gives you a more controlled burn. And I also keep a hunk of steel wool in my bag with a bunch of burnt matches with the heads that were already burnt, stuffed inside of it, in kind of like a little tubular kind of cocoon thing there. And the reason why is because, if you could start the fire and save the match, then put it away for a later date. So when I was out camping, I would light the fire and get the tinder going, and then put the burnt match back in my bag, so that I had emergency tinder if I needed it. So try to be as sparing as possible. There's also another technique. You could take those paper matches that you get from like a gas station that they put out for free on the counters, and you can take a knife or a razor blade, if your knife's not sharp enough, and split the matches in two, and use that to help you start a fire. And this way, you can make one match into two. It's a little harder to do it with wooden matches, but it can be done, I guess. I've never attempted it. It just seems kind of wasteful to me. But that's what that little bag works for. I also have a old prescription pill bottle here, one of the old big ones, full of cotton. Regular cotton is an amazing fire starter. All you need is a spark from a lighter. Let's just say your lighter's dead. You can use cotton. You want to keep it as dry as possible, but you can fluff up the cotton and use one spark from your lighter, and it'll usually spark right into a nice flame. So I actually have a video up on YouTube, how to start a fire in the snow. So you can, if you really are curious with some of the things that I keep in my bug out bag and how to start a fire. I didn't go into too much detail because I tried to keep the video short, but if you go to Steely Bags TV, it's spelled SteelyBags TV, that's my YouTube channel. I'm going to give you a heads up, some of my older it's a lot of my older stuff I haven't done a video in about a year. I haven't posted a lot of the stuff that was requested by fans of my Facebook page on YouTube, because it's just a pain in the neck to get stuff on YouTube right now. But Facebook, it's a little easier for me to post for some reason. Go figure, most people have an easier time with YouTube than Facebook. But yeah, so trying not to be too critical of some of my stuff. I wasn't quite used to talking to a camera. I was kind of, not being myself. I was a little too rigid and, worried about looking like a dum-dum. So, not that I don't already, but either way. My point is I was a little nervous, wasn't quite used to being on camera yet, and I was trying to keep my videos short, and a lot of my newer stuff isn't even up on YouTube, so so don't be too critical about that. But in the spring, when I have better equipment, I'm going to be doing a lot more comprehensive videos. It's just the fact that I film everything with some cheap cameras that I have, and all I have to edit with is a tablet. And every time I transfer the SD cards from my camera to my tablet, for some reason, the editing apps that I have, because for some reason there's not a lot of good editing apps on the Google Play Store. That drives me nuts. And there's only like a couple of them that are like $20, and I'm not spending $20 on a digital app that could be crap. Because we all know, or at least for those of you who don't know, they give you like a 24-hour refund period, but it takes you a lot more than 24 hours to figure out all the features on it and whether or not you would want it. And they don't give you a free trial version. So you're taking a big risk spending $20 on an app that you don't even know is going to work well or not with your particular device. Because it may work great for other people, and on all these people on their reviews are like, oh, it's such a great app, I use it all the time, but your particular device may not work well. So that's just for you, some of you guys who aren't so tech savvy out there, guys and gals, sorry. But that's really what I'm getting down to. So I'm getting down to the last 3 minutes of this episode. I'm going to come back for a part 2 in a couple minutes. So for now, we are going to play some more music, and I will catch you guys in part 2. This is Z-Man signing off for part 1 of Z-Man in the morning. We kind of got a late start today, so now it's going to be Z-Man in the afternoon. But, yeah, so we'll get started with the music, and enjoy, guys.
There's a point where it tips, there's a point where it breaks, there's a point where it bends, and a point we just can't take.
By the way, this song is called Time to Say Goodbye.
There's a